Hi, I'm Joan Weber with the Center for Ministry Development, and I am so happy to welcome you to our webinar today on making room for young disciples. This will be recorded, and tomorrow you will receive a link that can take you to the recording, to a PDF of our slides, and to a special gift from us from Youth Ministry Access. Just in case some of you are new to webinars, you have on the right-hand side of your screen a box that has an orange arrow. If it is minimized and you only see the orange arrow, in order to ask questions, you want to click on that orange arrow and then the whole screen will come up. And we ask you that anytime you have a question during the webinar, and feel free to ask at any time, please click on the questions box, not the chat box, to ask your questions or make your comments. I am excited to introduce our panel to you today. We are going to be sharing with you through the voices of Angel Barrera, our project coordinator for Youth Ministry Access and many other things, CMDNet, Susan Searle, who is our coordinator for Just 5 Days and youth leader, and our director, Tom East, who is also responsible for our national workshop series and our certificate in youth ministry studies, among many, many other things. So with that, I would like to invite all of us into prayer. And since just the day before yesterday, we celebrated the Feast of Pentecost, our prayer will be to the Holy Spirit. So as Catholics, as people of good faith, as people who are Trinitarian, with that celebration coming up next Sunday, let's begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit. Inspire us to be missionary disciples to all the young people you call us to serve. Give us open minds to discern your will, passionate hearts to love those who need it most, and open hands to serve the most vulnerable young people in our faith communities and on the peripheries. Use us as your instruments to help young people know you more intimately, to know the Son and to know the Father, and help them to embrace and share their God-given gifts with a world which needs them to make your kingdom come. We ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So just to jump right in and talk about making room for these young disciples in our midst, Angel is going to lead us off. So take it away, Angel.
And I'm coming. Let me just show my screen real quick. Wonderful. So again, my name is Angel Barrera with the Center for Ministry Development, and I'm really happy to be able to get us going on this important topic about youth leadership. And so we're going to be exploring in this first session, essentially, why is youth leadership important? I've had the personal experience of sitting with many parish councils, with pastors, with leadership teams, of exploring, how they want to take their youth ministry to the next level. And many of them always end up at that point where they want to get more young people involved and invite them to be leaders. But I think there's a lot that goes unsaid about why we want young people to be involved and exactly how we want them to be involved. So in our couple of sessions that we have after this, we'll explore some particular points of that. But I do want to just name some of the things that help us explore how youth leadership connects with our invitation to young people to be disciples. And I think it really hinges on this understanding that young people are gifts to the young church, to the church. And so it happens that when we explore the needs of a parish and the world, we find that we need new ideas, we need energy, we need excitement, we need optimism, hopes, dreams, we need passion and concern for what's going to happen with the social justice issues there in our local communities. And many of us find that our parishes are spending a lot of time, money, and resources and energy to find just what those resources are beyond the parish community. And we're looking for consultations and books and such like that. And we need to recognize that there is a huge treasure trove of gifts and resources right within our midst, within our own faith communities, and that's among the young people. And so that's exactly what, when we start naming what are the gifts of young people, we find that it's honesty, tech savvy, that they're enthusiastic, relational, passionate about social justice and concern. And we need to see that what they have to offer really pairs with many of our needs within our own faith communities and with that of the world. And the church is no stranger to this. The U.S. bishops in 1997, at this point, 20 years ago, authored a document renewing the vision and named that the definition of youth ministry is twofold. And it's one, that youth ministry is the response of the Christian community to the needs of young people. And I do have to say, given my experience in working with the church, that we tend to go there first and really think of that aspect of how we minister to young people and explore that really well with our programs and events. But it's the latter that we're exploring a little bit more fully in our time together, and really just wrestling with, and how do young people integrate and share their gifts with the larger Christian community, because it's just that, the sharing of the unique gifts of youth with the larger community. Sometimes when we think of inviting young people to be a part of our parish community, to be a leader, to be a faithful witness and disciple of Jesus Christ, we're really asking them to do it on our terms, the way we want to do it, and the way we've kind of structured and laid out for it to happen. And so it's really a challenge for us to move beyond that and stretch ourselves to where we want to go. There's some amazing research happening with the Fuller Youth Institute around growing young, and it explores the success of certain faith communities that are growing in its membership while others are shrinking, and while the median age of these faith communities is growing younger and younger. Consequently, and that's the namesake of the research. And so they explore these different strategies and principles and just things that they found in common in all of these growing young faith communities. And one that I find especially relevant for this topic about youth leadership and discipleship is about key chain leadership. And it's just a wonderful quip, because many of us probably have a huge wad of keys like that depicted, maybe even bigger, to show, where the rooms and doors and closets and spaces that we have access to, and all the gates that we can open, and that these become a representation of the authority, the power, the decision making that we have. And some of the stories that they account for in the research, they name the interactions of young people and adult ministry leaders. Without thinking, and just kind of entrusting young people, they give them a key, and here you go, here's a key to that closet or to that room. And for the young person, it becomes a profound sense of trust, of access to the parish community. And it's a style of leadership, it's a style of accompanying young people and empowering them that they have something to offer. And so some of the other types of leadership that they named and profiled in certain faith communities could be those keyless leaders. These are young people, maybe older people, that just don't have access to make an influence, to be a leader, that they're not trusted, they're not in the right circles and to have that influence that they want to have. So they were equipped as keyless leaders. Then you have the key hoarding leaders, those that want to keep that all to themselves and just kind of amass all of this power and decision making, and not be able to empower and enable other young people, other young disciples, other adult leaders to share in that responsibility. Then we also have those key loaning leaders, those that kind of relinquish power for a little bit and kind of take it back as soon as possible, and really operating from a mentality that they can do it better than anyone else, and they've just reluctantly given it for a while. So it's this idea of key chain leadership, about being able to disconnect and give and handing that off, and giving them the right resources, the right people, the right resources, and the right time to be able to be successful as leaders in the church, but also in the world. And what that can mean is that we have to explore and allow our young people to try new things and to take risks. And those are some unsettling words for some of us. and it really stretches us in some ways. But this is exactly what we're called to do. Kevin Prevo is an author for Youth Ministry Access, our subscription resource, and he wrote a wonderful journal article on youth leadership. And he talks about in his youth that he had gone to daily mass every Friday, and his older brother would assist in the liturgy, and how he longed to be there assisting as an altar server, but he couldn't because of a medical diagnosis he had with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. So he usually needed to get around with crutches and with a wheelchair and such. And so he had asked the pastor time and time again, and he just wasn't allowed to assist. The pastor couldn't see practically how that would happen. But when he was 12, the associate pastor took him up on that, and they worked together, and with that invitation he helped him to serve in the at the altar. And Kevin writes that he's sure the associate pastor was still concerned for the cruets and the hosts and all that, but this became a very significant moment, an entry point into a life of ministry and serving and exploring his vocation, because of the risk and the space that was created to allow him to try that. And I've had that personal experience, and I'm sure many of you have had, when you think of the caring adults that gave you some opportunity to try, and they resourced you and they mentored you to be successful. And many of us can feel like, Rob, I don't want to go there. I like what my routine, I like last year's program, and I want to do it again. Or we've been doing this for 10, 20 years, and it just works, and there's no reason to change that. But I have to say that Pope Francis is very clear on this, and he's asking us to get out of that rut and not to get stuck. In his apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium, he wrote, pastoral ministry in a missionary key seeks to abandon the complacent attitude that says, we've always done it in this way. I invite everyone to be bold and creative in the task of rethinking the goal, structure, style, and methods of evangelization in their respective communities. And I think he speaks more forcefully in a more recent address to young people in this pre-synodal meeting that just happened a couple months ago. He was speaking to the young people, and he says, we need you young people, living stones of a church with a young face, but not made up, as I said, not artificially rejuvenated, but revived from within. And you challenge us to emerge from this logic that says, but it's always been done like that. And that logic, please, is poisonous. It is a sweet poison because it calms your soul and leaves you as though you were anesthetized, unable to walk. Emerge from this logic of it has always been done this way, so as to follow creatively the tracks of authentic yet creative Christian tradition. So again, these are powerful words from the Holy Father, and it's engaging the whole church in a creative exploration of how do we move forward, how do we engage our young people to be the living stones of the church. And I think it really begins with us personally recognizing that we don't have it all together, and essentially that we have needs. We have needs that our young people can offer and help us with. And so we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have it all together. Rather, we are working with our young people collaboratively and in accompaniment to be able to do that and to journey together. I think it practically means we have to change the way we do things. And it can change from us doing a lot of direct service and programming, because if we stay there, it can create this consumeristic experience of the faith. It's just come get what you've gotten. This is the menu of things I've got going for you. Come get what you need. But rather resourcing, coaching, mentoring, and creating an environment for young people to try and fail and succeed, and to be able to explore just what gifts do they have? How do they fit into the church, and how they can use them at the service of the church and the world? I think it makes our role, it shifts our role to be able to think of how do we facilitate opportunities for young people to share those gifts. And it could practically mean we need to create clear opportunities for volunteering and leading. So it changes the work from me being in front and center of the group of young people and talking, to how do I engage and empower and enable young people to do what they can uniquely do and offer. It could mean making job descriptions or creating jobs and tasks with terms. It's no one's a stranger to the fact that young people are extraordinarily busy and committed to many, many things. And it's helpful if you can say, I need you for 3 months if you want to commit to this, or I need 2 hours, a week to be able to update the social media pages, or to do the website, or to help out in music ministry, but to give a clear understanding of what it is that we're inviting young people to do. I do have a wonderful example of this that I've personally experienced, and it was a local story here in the Diocese of Brownsville with a group of young people, and it's called I Am Raymondville. I won't be able to do it justice in our time together, but I'll encourage you to explore this story and some of the resources that you're going to get after this. But again, you're going to see that there were some unique gifts that these young people possess that they were able to share and really make a difference in their community, as well as for one particular individual. So again, that's a bit of what I've got for you. If you got any questions, please write those in. And this would be a wonderful opportunity to kind of explore again how youth and leadership work together, and how and why this is important.
Thanks so much, Angel. Gosh, you make me want to, first of all, reflect on what kind of a keychain leader I am or am not, but also the inspiration of those wonderful young people. Right now, we don't have any questions, so I'm going to turn it over to Susan and I'm going to make her the presenter for our next session.
Great, Joan, let me get my screen up. Okay, from the beginning. Great. So as Angel was talking about, that whole idea of, empowering youth and creating room for them to do some different and some things sort of outside of the box. And so I wanted to start with just an experience that I had. I was invited to go up to visit this youth summit up in northern New York, upstate New York. And it just was such an eye-opening experience for me, because here was this, for the past 9 years, this summit that was occurring, and it was gathering, like over 200 schools and young people to come every summer and to talk about issues of climate change, and then to come up with ways that they can make a difference in their own communities. So this summit was, again, just a really big eye-opening experience for me to see these young people on fire and, really looking at social justice issues. And so it kind of begged the question for me is like, wow, how come we're not doing this in our parishes back home? Why are we not offering this type of gathering of young people? How can we leverage the enthusiasm of young people in our parish communities for climate change, yes, but many, many other social justice issues as well. And we know from Pope Francis, where he talks about where he wants us to make a mess. It might seem like, well, how do we do this? This is different than what we've been doing at our parish. But again, it's a call from Pope Francis to make a mess, to try some things, some offer, as Angel said, some new and different ways of ways to gather young people and empower them. Often the term is used, social innovation. How do we help young people take issues of concern today, discuss them, talk about them, break open the word, and then maybe brainstorm some ideas and come up with solutions and ways that they can solve some of the issues. There are a lot of young people doing some pretty amazing things already in our communities. We know that this generation in particular is different than other generations, particularly because they've grown up unsteady world. I think nobody would argue that the world today is vastly different than the world in which I grew up in, or maybe you grew up in. They've grown up in hearing about issues like global warming, about terrorism, about immigration, about random school violence. So they are a generation that very much is not sitting around waiting for change to happen. They are going to make change happen. And we saw this in the recent March for Our Lives, where there was over 1.2 million young people who gathered to march against gun violence in schools. That's the largest protest, if you will, that's happened since the Vietnam War. So we've seen young people mobilize to take action. And I think that there was a lot of surprise from adults about this. They're like, "Wow, these young people, they're really doing something." I would assume that that a lot of us that work in ministry, these were the young people we already know. We're like, "Yeah, young people are capable. They are making a difference. They are doing things." So maybe it wasn't so much of a surprise for us that they could mobilize this giant march. But let's just look at some examples of some other young people. Um, Gabby Frost, a 15-year-old founder and CEO of a project that's helping young people prevent teen suicide. This young 12-year-old girl developed an app to help Alzheimer's patients to recognize and remember their loved ones. Amazing innovation. I mean, this young man, high school sophomore, is developing ways to help with cancer. This young girl, I love this story. She took on 17 magazine. I mean, we all, most of us young girls growing up know about 17 magazine. It's pretty much a powerhouse. And she was recognizing that the pictures that she saw in the magazine didn't look like her and a lot of her friends. And so she took on 17 magazine, and actually they changed a lot of their policies because of her. This is one of my favorite stories. This young man from Kenya, so this is like a global thing. Young people, not just in the United States, but all over the world, are coming together to make change. And this young man lived in a small village, and the villagers depended on their livestock. And the lions would creep in at night and would kill a lot of their livestock. And so typically they were shot and killed. And so this young man thought, well, is there a more humane way that we can stop this? So he created a solar power fence that flashes lights at lions when they come close to the livestock, so they didn't have to destroy all the lions. And then Boy and Slat, you may have heard of his awesome machine where it's cleaning trash out of the ocean, something that we know is much needed in the world today. So we can see examples of young people doing amazing things. This high school student is training right now currently to be one of the first person on Mars. She's completed several of the NASA trainings, and so she's going for it. Love it. And this story in particular, you may have seen it in the news recently. Danielle Benitez, she's a young girl. She actually attends a Catholic school in San Diego, and experience at her Catholic school that motivated her to make a change. Her Catholic school participated with a nonprofit organization that builds homes in Tijuana. And so after that experience, she was really motivated to do something. So on her own, without help from her parents, she did a GoFundMe page, sold lemonade, did all kinds of fundraising things to raise money so that she could contribute to building a home for a needy family in Mexico. And when she went down to visit this family, she saw that they lived in a very humble means, no real electricity or running water in their home, without many of the creature comforts that we have here. And she was asked, why did you want to do this? And she said it was the least that she could do, was to serve these people. So I particularly highlight her experience that she had with her Catholic school. And we hear over and over again of young people who have had experiences in their parish ministries or Catholic schools, doing service trips, doing weekend service opportunities, or year-long service opportunities, but those experiences of serving others that have really helped young people to grow in their faith. There's a quote that I've often used that talks about kissing the leper, how we're all called to go out and to be like St. Francis and kiss the leper, to see the face of Christ in those that are most in need. And our young people are longing for those experiences. And Pope Francis, he talks a lot about, he gives the idea of that young people need to be on the move. They need to do something. So he talks about, having them do soup kitchens and help with the homeless and help with the needy and be active in their faith. Because he says that that's when they really feel their faith, is when they're actively involved in serving others. And so how can we do that? Just some practical things. We can teach compassion through prayer experiences. Oftentimes in our prayer experiences, we're praying for other people, and just that simple act teaches a young person about compassion, about thinking about somebody else's situation, walking in somebody else's shoes. We can tie our prayer experiences into many of the Catholic social teaching issues. We can talk about and pray about human trafficking, about immigration, about gun violence, about clean drinking water around the world. Issues like that we can bring into our youth ministries and create prayer experiences where young people have an opportunity to pray for something beyond themselves, which praying for ourselves is important, but teaching compassion to pray beyond just ourselves. Other practical thing is, provide opportunities for young to discern their gifts. Again, Pope Francis, this quote talks about how it's so important that we provide, opportunities, whether it be in our weekly gatherings or on retreat experiences, where young people really think about, what are my gifts? How am I being called? How do I plan to use my gifts in the future after I graduate from high school? What career would I like to take part in? And will that career make a difference in the world in some way? And so our youth ministries are areas for us, places for us to gather youth and to help them discern their giftedness. And then what can they use their giftedness on? How can they apply their gifts out in the world? We also want to, as Angel mentioned, we want to train our young people. It's good to say we want youth to be leaders, but we have to provide a place for them to learn, to train, and to teach them 21st century skills like critical thinking. This goes back to that summit that I mentioned at the first, where they're really thinking about tough, complicated issues. So let's do that in our parishes and our schools. Tough, complicated issues, and then what's the faith story that connects to it? What does the church teach about whatever the issue is? What does scripture say about it? Have them practice and role play some problem solving ideas, some decision making, work on collaboration, teaching young people how to do some win-win negotiations. How do we move from I win, you lose attitude to let's all win in a discussion? And just helping them with communication skills. Yes, they probably get some communication skills in their school, wherever it may be, but communication skills is something we can always work on and something that we can continually grow with. So, offering communication skills with your young people, maybe inviting parents to come in and have a parent-youth communication night. Think creatively. What are some ways that you can help incorporate some of this critical thinking, problem solving, decision making, collaboration, and communication skills in your ministries? And then, of course, we want to talk about offering some meaningful service ideas. I think you all probably know that while picking up trash around the parish is probably important, our young people want to do something more than just that. They want to do something where they feel like they're making a difference. They want some one-on-one, person-to-person contact. They want to see the results of the work that they are able to do. So offering, whether it's a mission trip or a weekend thing or a continual service project through your ministry, but again, hands-on opportunities where young people can really feel like they're making a difference. And then to process those experiences, what do they learn from that experience? What do they want to do? What are some possible solutions? Again, that idea of social innovation. What can they do to help maybe solve some of the issues in their own communities? Of course, we offer some mission opportunities. Young Neighbors in Action is our high school mission, and Just 5 Days is our middle school mission. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joan again, see if there's any questions, and then on to Tom.
We don't have any questions right now. You are all doing such a great job that people You've answered their questions. I think you've set people up beautifully for preparation for the synod this fall on young people, the faith and vocational discernment. The more we can provide opportunities for that, the better off we are. And also want to say thanks for mentioning young neighbors. We're going to now switch to Tom, our director, who will do the last part of our webinar.
Thank you, Joan, and it's really delightful to share a little bit, building upon the things that you've been hearing about in terms of youth leadership. Certainly something that's been a passion of mine from the time I was working in parish and campus ministry and throughout my ministry career. I think it's good to take the moment to kind of stand back and look at our vision for youth leadership, but also to look a little bit at what the vision is of our parish community. How do you see young disciples in our parish, but how does the parish community see the young disciples in their midst? Certainly we know that there's so many well-intentioned members of our community who pray for young people, who are concerned for young people, but sometimes we can see the young people as other, different from us as adults. Sometimes when they try to get involved in leadership or ministry, parishioners can see young people as usurpers or people who haven't kind of earned their stripes yet, or need to kind of wait before they contribute. And I think it's good for us to take that viewpoint of, what's our role in helping kind of clean the glasses, clean the lenses for our community to see our young people in new ways. One way I really want to invite us to think about as a parish community, to think about the young people in our midst, is to think of them as people to whom we've made a commitment. When our young people were baptized as babies or children or as youth, the community made a specific commitment to them, and I'm fascinated by this because we look at what we know from our church teachings, and we see that in the Book of Rites it says the people of God, that is the church made present by the local community, has an important part to play in the baptism of both children and adults. We know that the parish community itself is one of the significant elements of the baptismal rite. That's why the font is an important feature in our worship space. That's why the normative place for baptism is within the parish worship. And so we see that the people of God, the parish community, are an important part of that rite. We also know that the specific commitment is made is that young people have a right to the love and help of the community. Before and after the celebration of the sacrament, the child has a right to the love and help of the community. So not just that, we can give them our help and support if we want to, but they have a right to that love and help. That's part of the commitment we've made. And it's also a commitment to how we look at the young people. The parish community says yes to the newly baptized. What our rite tells us is that the community exercises this duty when it expresses the assent together with the celebrant after the profession of faith of the parents and godparents. In my parish, when the families enter with children or babies to be baptized, the parents make a specific plea to the community of what they seek from the community to support them in helping the young person to grow in faith. And the community, after the baptismal rite, makes a specific commitment to support these young children, support the families, but to support these growing disciples. And this leads us to thinking about young people in our midst as the treasure of the whole church. It says, in this way, it's clear that the faith in which children are baptized is not the private possession of the individual family, but the common treasure of the whole Church of Christ. The expression of faith of this baby, this child, this young person is the treasure of the whole church. And so to view our young people as treasures, I challenge each of us on Sunday when we're back in our parish to take a look around the community. As we see the young people, what we're seeing are people to whom we've made a commitment. We've made a promise. And to promise to see them as a treasure, I think really impacts the way we involve them in leadership. The parish made this commitment to young people to love, to help, and treasure them. And in a practical way, this means that we join with the family in helping young people to grow in faith. Part of growing in faith will be empowering them to witness, empowering them to leadership, to ministry, to service, and it's seeing young people as a treasure in our midst. In a study of successful youth organizations, It was noted that successful organizations see youth as a resource to be developed, not as a problem to be solved. I've seen many examples where parishes have lifted up young people in leadership roles, liturgical ministry roles, had an opportunity to study effective youth ministry and to go on site at parishes where the parishes were taking great pride in their young people as leaders. And they were seeing young people in new ways because of their opportunities to be involved in leadership. And when we don't see youth as a treasure, if we're seeing them as a problem to be solved, it can be, well, look at our young people. They have all these piercings and tattoos, and sometimes their hair is purple, or they're sometimes loud, or their ideas make us uncomfortable, or sometimes they just say what they think. What can we do with them at a meeting? What can we do with them in a ministry? And I think to remember our promise to them that we made at baptism and to see them as this treasure to be opened up. As Angel reminded us in the vision of youth ministry and in renewing the vision, that we commit ourselves to responding to their needs, but also to including the gifts of young people. I think it's an act of moving over and making room for young people. I remember when I was a teen, I came from a big family. We didn't always have a car or vehicle that could get all of us around. And growing up in Southern California, longed to be able to go to the beach on a Sunday afternoon. So I would tag along with my older sisters, and we would take public transportation. We'd take what they called the RTD. We'd have to transfer a couple times. A lot of the people on the bus were getting ready and going to mass. And so what I noticed entering the bus was that there were a lot of empty spaces where people weren't traveling with a companion. But in each of those empty spaces, the adult had taken their stuff and put it on the seat next to them, almost kind of saying, like, if there's going to be one empty seat on this bus, I'm hoping it's going to be the one next to me. And I understand that I empathize with that feeling. But for a young person entering the bus, there's this feeling that the room is all kind of staked out. And I think physically, for a parish community, we're trying to say to the leaders, we're trying to say to the people involved in ministries is, let's pick up our stuff. Let's move over and make room for young people, not to replace us, but to minister with us. And we provide hospitality to those young people. Similarly, when I was a young adult, I had the opportunity to get on the bus at my parish as we traveled to Dodger Stadium to see the Holy Father and to experience him lead us in and preside at Liturgy of the Eucharist. And what I noticed is that was a really crowded bus, but there was so much room for everyone because we were all moving over and we were singing songs, we were praying, we were just charged up. So I think what we want to be our parish is that bus where there's room for everyone, where we make room physically for young people, we make room in leadership roles, but we also make room for their new ideas. We provide a different kind of hospitality, a hospitality for new ideas and new perspectives. So with love, with empathy, with humility, we make room and we help them to share in leadership, ministry, and service. And this also means that we take the time to prepare. As a leader, we prepare the community for young people to be involved. We help them to know how to welcome, include, and affirm young people in leadership and ministry roles. We prepare the adults who will work side by side with young people. And we make a commitment to helping young people grow. In some parishes, there's this sense, well, young people are, they've got so much energy, we just kind of throw them in the deep end of the pool, let them try things. But I think the places where I've seen with great success, they make the commitment to train and provide formation for young leaders and for youth who are involved in ministries. They take the time and the risk and the courage to support them and to hold them accountable for doing their ministry, for doing their leadership role with excellence. Young people deserve that kind of support, that kind of supervision, that kind of risk that we take when we catch them in the act of doing things right, and sometimes help them to know how to grow. So as we think about what's our approach to the young people in our midst, what's the parish attitude or the parish response to, or how does the parish feel about welcoming young people? I'm going to turn it over to Joan. She's going to share with you a quick poll that gives you a chance to kind of name where is your parish community in terms of really welcoming and including young people.
Okay, thanks, Tom. The poll is now up, and we invite all of you to participate in how you describe your parish's stance. And you can only choose one of the 4 options. So please participate, and then we will share the results. Okay, we've got a lot of people responding. We'll take about 10 more seconds for it. Okay, it looks like everyone, oh, we have one more just now. 72% have voted. I'd like to get the rest of you in the last couple seconds. Great, great. Got some more coming in. Okay, I'm going to close the poll and going to share the results, which 17% of you said your parish is warm and welcoming toward young people. 21% said open and interested. 50% said willing but unsure, and 13% cold and judgmental. So Tom, I'll let you interpret those results.
Sure. What we're seeing from these results is that 71% of you said that your parish was either open and interested or willing but unsure. And what we see from those responses is that you've got an openness of heart. There's a willingness to be welcoming of young people, but there's a lack of sureness to know how to do that. And that matches with my experience of talking to adults in parishes, that they have a heart for young people. They want to pray for young people. They want the best for young people. But there's something about the current situation. There's still things that are new, and it can be frightening. So if we've got the willing but unsure, or the cold, or the open and interested, we have something to build on. We have those open hearts. We can invite our parish community to pray for young people. We can invite our parish community and we can equip them with hands-on ways to know how to welcome them in greater ways. If our parish is already warm and welcoming, that's a blessing. Let's share the things that are working with other communities. Let's build on that and be the witnesses in our communities that we can be. And if we find that our parish is cold and judgmental, then let's find the ways that young people can lead and support them in their ministry roles within our communities, where we can control those variables a little bit more while we're still kind of working on the big picture. Because really, if we make our parishes warm and welcoming for young people, we really will make them warm and welcoming for everyone. And I think that's the vision, that's the dream. But it's about taking on this role in a serious way. To lead in ministry is to make room for young disciples. It's about sharing the vision. The big vision is that young disciples will grow in faith, surrounded by a community that loves them in Christ's name. That is the promise we made to them at baptism. So what we can do is help youth identify their gifts, find roles that match. In the process of that, we'll show the community what is possible. And we take practical steps to empower the community to be in relationship with their young members and equip the community to value, to cherish, to treasure, and appreciate young leaders. So the things I've talked about are that the parish made this commitment to love, help, and treasure young people. To live this out, we move over, make room for their ideas and their gifts, and that we take on our leadership role to equip the parish to do this. Just a few quick ideas of how to try this. I think one thing we can do is look for ways to highlight and affirm youth as leaders and affirm the adults who are mentoring them. So whether that's a blurb in the bulletin or on the website, or maybe occasionally an announcement from Mass to hold up some young people that are doing some exceptional things, help the broader community to know and appreciate their young people. Build gift discernment and ministry mentorships into existing programs and communities. One parish told us a beautiful story about what they do at confirmation. Towards the end of the preparation, the young people prepare a resume with their gifts, their interests, their experiences. These resumes are then provided to the ministries of the parish, who then discern people that they will invite to a ministry. At the end of the confirmation ritual, at the end of the confirmation liturgy, as the young people are processing from the church to the hall for the cake and celebration, someone from the ministry reaches out their hand and invites by name each young person to come and try their ministry. I see your name is Susan. You'd be a wonderful lector at our parish. Your name is Jose. We'd like you to join our service ministries. Every young person who's confirmed is invited to a leadership, ministry, or service role. This is just one way to think about our parish in new ways. A couple of other ideas. find and develop those allies and advocates who will be at the meetings and in the opportunities, keeping an eye out for opportunities for young people to share in leadership. And then involve the parish community in the formation of young leaders. I know a lot of parishes where, let's say, the Knights of Columbus will come and meet with the young people and will sponsor them to go to a youth leadership training, or where the youth community invites parishioners to take stock in youth by pledging a certain amount to send them on a conference or a leadership event or a mission trip, and then reports back to the stockholders. There's just a lot of ways to involve the parish in praying for and supporting young people as leaders. I did want to mention a couple of the resources of the Center for Ministry Development. Youth Leader is our youth leadership formation program. We've been doing this kind of work for nearly 4 decades, but the Youth Leader program for the last 24 years. And right now you can provide a form of Youth Leader as a day-long event for your parish or cluster of parishes. You can provide a weekend. You can provide a 4 or 5 day conference for your parish, your cluster parishes, or your diocese, or your Catholic school. Also wanted to mention Youth Ministry Access. Amongst the resources for middle school and high school youth that you and your team can access through this subscription, there's numerous sessions about youth leadership topics and retreat ideas. So just a couple of resources that can help us. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Joan.
Thanks so much, Tom. You just inspire me with your practical examples. I would like to invite Angel and Susan back on with their webcams. We do have several questions for you three that have come in, and the first one comes from a good friend of ours, Chris Edmonds, and she asks, what is the best way to mobilize youth as individual disciples rather than as groups? Many parishes still conduct ministry to youth as a group activity. Is one-to-one leadership formation the answer? Don't all talk at once.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll share a couple quick ideas, and then if anyone wants to jump in. I love the question because I think one of the things we can do, instead of thinking of young people as helpers to help me out in this ministry, the young people in our parish community are already leading. We have the president of the Spirit Club. We have the head of debate. All these people in leadership roles in their schools are already in our parish. So thinking about youth leadership also as how do we identify young people who are already in leadership roles in the community, and then yes, do some one-on-one forming of them, helping them connect their Catholic values to their leadership role is also part of youth leadership development.
Did anyone else want to add on to that? We have other questions.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I would just agree with Tom, and just to piggyback on what we've already said is that just the importance of helping young people to discern their gifts, and that could be something that you do all together, in a group experience or retreat or something like that. But just kind of sparking the idea of, oh, I would be good at whatever this is, and then encouraging them to go out and to use those gifts in their communities.
Yeah, and I would just add that I think the practical aspect of that matchmaking, what are the gifts and interests of a young person with the ministry is really important, and giving them the ability to say this isn't working out. I think it happens too often that and people are afraid to sign up for a ministry because you're supposed to be there forever, and there's a kind of that impression that I can't get out. So I think those kind of term limits, like we'd love you to serve for a couple of weeks or up through this retreat for a few weeks, a couple months, are really helpful. Like a season of ministry or something like that, so they can give it an honest effort and then see and evaluate, is this something that I'm really excited to continue doing?
Right. I think a lot of people out there are going to resonate with this question. So many parishes have private baptisms. How can we help connect the understanding of the children's rite of baptism with the community? Anything specific or just a reminder?
Wow, this is where we really need to put on our parish advocacy hats, because the people who make the decisions about how baptisms are done, the liturgy committee, the parish staff, the pastor, ultimately. But part of my experience is sometimes when the parish sees a new way, then then they're like more likely to jump on it. So I would say if I was at my parish, I would take some people from the parish who are in decision-making roles to another parish that does baptisms within the Sunday worship, have them experience that, and then start talking about what we could do at our parish. It's always good to do a pilot. Pilots feel so safe and unthreatening. What if we tried this once just to see what we think? But then to experience something new could be very growthful for the parish.
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge, and what comes to mind is I think it becomes a greater challenge with the larger the parishes are becoming, and so it's hard to. I think it just really underscores we need to do more relationship building small communities where you're knowing people by name, families, and such. So I think there may be a lot of work before the baptism happens that could help that really be a community celebration rather than something that's happening for an obscure family I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to share. Somebody once told me about an experience at their parish where the baptisms were kind of individual, but what the parish also offered was like a monthly or quarterly gathering of all the families that were being baptized, having children baptized, gathered together to have a kind of parish-wide celebration to meet the families, greet the families, have a little cake, but some kind of other celebration where people can feel like they're part of that sacrament.
Yeah, and I think it's doing those small things like taking every opportunity you can. That I've been in settings where people come in as strangers and they leave as strangers after spending 2 hours together. And so how are we intentional in the hospitality and building community so that people get to know a little bit more about one another, or they at least walk away with someone else's name. So I think that's going to be really important to addressing that.
The next one is a comment from Holly. She says, not a question, but our parish recruits children to pass out bulletins at the end of Mass. I love it. They love it if they're regular. They get their own name tag, and it shows the parishioners that children matter early on. Any reaction?
Yeah, great example.
Absolutely. And that everyone has something to offer.
And a joyful way to end liturgy, too.
Yeah.
Smiling children's face.
Karen has a question about serving. She says, is there a website for Catholic volunteer organizations or Catholic service projects?
I believe there is an organization that's for the young adults involved in service, and that could be a resource that we can make available as part of the follow through.
I wish there would be one for high school. There isn't, but the Catholic Volunteer Services for college age and beyond is wonderful. It has every religious communities, a service project like Jesuit Volunteer Corps. It has lay organizations, just wonderful opportunities. For high school, I think it's something that your diocesan director of youth ministry would be able to help you with. I know in Omaha, when Rita Ramos was our diocesan director, she created a chart for all of the parish youth ministers, and she named all the national service programs. We were one of them, Young Neighbors in Action, and she would be really good about identifying the charism of each one and where they might be stronger or weaker. Like she'd check if they follow safe environment policy or they don't. She would check if they include Catholic social teaching or they don't, liturgy, all those kinds of things. So you might want to check with your diocesan offices. They might have a better sense of the national picture. Of course, we would love you to consider, as Susan said, just 5 days for your middle schoolers and Young Neighbors for your high schoolers. We think our niche is that we do weave scripture and Catholic social teaching through the week. We really try to help young people to see beyond the week of service to what happens when we go back home. And this year we've added a strong component to Young Neighbors on helping them to become change makers so they could do something like those young people Susan named in her slides who have made a difference in the world.
Well, and I would also add, if you're looking to host your own or resources on how to augment something you're already doing or a service project in your area, that Youth Ministry Access could be a very good option for you to consider, because it does a lot of the pre-work and doing the theology, the theological reflection and unpacking those themes, and then engaging in structure in the service, and then providing a way to reflect on what you did and how to live that out continuously or in other ways through advocacy or social justice. So if you're looking for creative ways on how to do that yourself, YMA could have, I mean, we have a whole section on that. So.
And I was just going to tag on to the whole theme of making room when it comes to services. We've just found, it's been our experience, that there's no shortage of young people that want to go and do service, that want to participate in a mission or, something of that type. It's finding adults that can make room in their busy schedules, really, to help those young people, because the youth can't go on their own. So it's how to help our adults to volunteer to be part of mission experiences. So maybe it's some gatherings beforehand and helping adults understand the importance for them to volunteer to be with young people. But I've also found this, in my experience, I'm sure Joan can attest to be hers as well, that the adults who participate on a mission experience have just as great of experience as a young person, if not more. I especially love when parents come and they get to be there with their young people and see their son or daughter in action, doing service. It's a very rewarding experience.
We had a father who volunteered as a chaperone for Young Neighbors for the 4 years. His twin sons were in high school, and they went on Young Neighbors all 4 years. And then he had always planned to retire from mission trip, but he just had fallen in love with it. So now he's still chaperoning for other people's children. We have another great question. If you are just starting a youth program, where to start? Do we do a fun day event, Battle of Youth, or do a large service day? What would you recommend? And this is from Deborah.
I would do a little bit more fact finding and see what the interests are of the young people and what opportunities exist there. It's been my experience that young people already have a lot in terms of opportunities to get excited and get engaged, and sometimes they're looking for a way to make a difference. So maybe it could be that the service opportunity would be a better fit, or it could be that maybe they just need to get to know each other, build community, and that fun day event is going to be just that. But I think it would probably do a little bit of research, kind of sample. I don't know, just in conversation with some of those young people you have in mind on who you want to get involved in, and learn a little bit more about that. It's both a lot of coordinating in either way, but I think it'll give you a different return depending on who your audience is.
Yeah. I think in theme of what we're talking about today, I would start off right off the bat with young people helping to lead. If you could gather together a handful of youth who could help you plan something and have them be the inviters of all their friends and have them be the upfront people at masses inviting young people to come to things, you're gonna show them right from the get-go that this isn't a vertical ministry, that this is something that we're trying to build with and by and for young people. But building the youth leadership in from moment one, I think, would really be a great place to start.
Absolutely.
We have several more questions, so I'm going to see if we can get some of them in. How do we invite all parishioners to make more room by becoming keychain leaders? That's from Chris.
That's difficult. I mean, it's an organizational, like a culture, question. I think it's rooted in the small things, so small changes. And it's just funny, like how the way you start, the way you begin a meeting, or you change the way you start a meeting, or that you change the way that you welcome people into your liturgy, will help people become more or adopt that attitude of hospitality. And making sure that they greet one person by name or learn a new person's name. And then, I mean, literally, like maybe scoot over in the liturgy. I've been to many parishes where I'm visiting, and everyone kind of camps out at the end of the pew, and it's just like, well, I'm going to have to step over 10 people to find a seat, and I'd rather just stand in the back. But I don't know. It's, again, a culture question, and I think it begins with little things.
Yeah.
I would say one.
Go ahead, Joan.
I was just going to say, I find that especially older people, if they haven't been around teens for a long time, getting them acquainted with one teenager, that one-on-one, so they see this young, beautiful person contradicts every horrible stereotype I've ever heard about young people. That can be a way to kind of ripple out into the community. Tom, I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. I was just going to say, I would use the upcoming synod on young people of faith and vocational discernment as an excuse to have a mission at your parish that's talking about, valuing, treasuring the young disciples in our midst, and give practical ideas, have it help be led by young people as well, but bring in someone who can get the community charged up about this beautiful vision of moving forward in faith together. But take it head on as a parish project, and really equip the parish to do this.
That's great. I think we have time for one more question, and this is probably, Susan, for you. Do you have any ideas for getting around the red tape that comes for creating service opportunities for middle school students? Hollis asks this.
Yeah, I would say that we definitely struggle with that. It's finding service sites that will take, we're finding like under 15 or under 14-year-olds, it's hard to find those. It's really about being the bridge, and it's about building relationships. I just actually had a site coordinator email me yesterday. She was so excited because she's been doing Just 5 Days for the last 5 years, and she just now got into a site that she's been trying to get into. But she asks every summer. I think it's going to the sites, personally visiting with them, talking about your organization, showing them maybe some pictures of some young people that you have that have done things. I have found that though, once we can get the doors open and youth are allowed in, people love what the middle schoolers do, and they are just so like, oh my gosh, these kids work harder than any of our other volunteers. And so it's just getting the door open. So any way you can, grease the door, bring them coffee, go visit them, whatever you need to do, send them brochures and talk about your program, but just keep asking is really around the red tape. There are going to be some organizations that just have a hard line for liability, and that's, there's not really much that we can do about that. But there are some that will open the doors if you just kind of keep working at it.
Yeah. Well, I think oh, go ahead, Joe.
No, please, Angel, go.
Oh, well, I was going to just mention, I think the other level of red tape is that the parish just kind of practically how do you mobilize in a kind of safe environment. I really think you need to get parents involved. I find that parents of middle school youth are always looking for something to get them involved in. And so if we can give them enough information, enough formation and training and confidence in what their ability is to mentor their young person and their friends to be a small group leader, it's a wonderful way to just kind of overcome some of those things about transportation and lodging. So
thank you. Angel, you took the words right out of my mouth, and you said it better than I would have.
Oh.
We have reached our time, so I want to thank you on behalf of all of us at CMD for being with us this past hour. And just a reminder, after we close this webinar, you will be prompted to fill out an evaluation, and we would really appreciate your feedback. And tomorrow you will receive an email with the link to the recording, the slides, and the resource from Youth Ministry Access. So again, thank you, and in the spirit of Pentecost, may the Spirit be with you all through this summer that we are fast approaching. God bless.
God bless you.
Thanks.